Thank you so much. And I see we have people from all around Vietnam. How exciting. Well, I won't take too much time with the weather. I do want to jump right in and talk about how to teach with Guess What. And I think it's very important before I begin to say, this session is a background on, a course book, a series of books called Guess What that was written for primary level students. But, at the end of the day, a book cannot replace a teacher. So I want you to be thinking about some of the things I'm showing you and how this would apply in your class, how, your students would react to it. But remember, the whole thing that we want to do here is we want to provide good quality materials that help your students learn English. And so that's what I really wanted to show in this. I didn't want to say, to do this, step 1, say hello. Step 2, do this. It's not a step-by-step what to do every minute of the classroom. I think it's more important for us when we have new materials to sit back, to look, and to say, why is that in the book? What is it wanting to do? What is the aim? What is the objective of this? And then how does that fit with how my students learn? So really what we're going to be talking about today is the methodology of Guess What. And I'm really excited to talk about this because Guess What follows what we know students need to have a strong foundation in their language learning and developmental needs. And I think that's important. When we learn language, we have choices of what else to bring in, to talk about, to read about. Language does not exist by itself. Language, is about communication. So there has to be a message to communicate as well. So as we're looking at Guess What, or as you look at any course book that you use, but especially with Guess What, I want you to focus not just on how do we learn the language, but how are the students developing? What is it that we're having them have for input? What is it that we're asking them to talk about? How is this related to things that go beyond language to make sure that we're... Oh, for some reason, I got muted there for some reason, that we're developing our students and our life competencies, as well as making sure that when we are delivering the lesson, that there's a language learning aim as well. I didn't touch anything, so I don't know why my thing muted, but if it does that again, just let me know in the chat box. If you can't hear me, I'll be looking at the chat box, but yeah, sorry about that. So the Guess What methodology then, what is the things that we need to be looking at? What is it that makes Guess What itself a little bit special? Well, I think the first thing that I want you to see as we look in depth at Guess What is how input leads to output. One of the questions I get often is, my students, they don't want to speak in class. They seem like they're not confident. They seem like they don't want to participate. I ask a question and I get no response. How do I make them speak? And you can't really make them speak by force, but it's one of those things that sound funny, but we know it's true. In order to get more output from students, we have to increase the level of input. And so you're really going to find in Guess What, at the beginning of units, a lot of chances for input. And this input, mainly through listening, but listening and some textual cues, that's what leads us to output. Instead of just going to class one day and saying, speak now, here's the question, why aren't you talking? Oh no, that sort of thing. Another thing you're going to see with Guess What is how systems lead to skills. Now, we talk frequently about the 4 skills of English: reading, writing, listening, speaking. I think that we all know them and we know that they're important. But in order to get through to the skills, we have to have the support of systems. And unfortunately, in Southeast Asia, I don't know about you and where you teach, but unfortunately, in Southeast Asia in general, when it comes to systems of English, one of them we think of too much, which is grammar, and we forget about the other three systems, which are pronunciation, vocabulary, and discourse. Now, at the primary level, we're not going to be looking at discourse too much. Discourse means dealing with texts, dealing with things beyond the sentences. That's something that we usually look at the secondary level. But with the primary level, the three systems we care about a lot are pronunciation, especially how it leads to phonics. And pronunciation is not just for speaking, but when we tie it into phonics, it improves the reading skill as well. Grammar, of course, because we do need language. I did not say that grammar was not important. I just said that maybe sometimes we place its importance too high. Because the number one system that young learners need in order to provide a strong foundation, and again, in order to make skills happen, in order to let them speak in our class, in order to let them do writing and the output that we want, is vocabulary. So you're going to see a lot of vocabulary before grammar. And guess what? Because there's a famous quote in English language teaching, which I really love, that says, if you don't have grammar, there's little you can do. But if you don't have vocabulary, there's nothing you can do. So we really put a vocabulary before grammar approach, and then we put those systems leading on to the skills that we want to see. The third thing, like I said, is phonics and stories. You're going to see them in guess what? And you're going to see the same type of story go through each unit again and again and again, because stories aren't just there to teach the grammar. They're there to get us the skills of literacy. They're there to go beyond just reading and help us developing reading and writing and communication and understanding how stories work and how we learn from them. And because of that, you're going to see a phonics approach as well. We don't just talk about pronunciation. We have a section on sounds, but the sounds relates to phonics and how spelling relationships and word relationships go with those sounds. Very important with guess what? You're going to see a lot of child-centeredness and some personalization tasks. And you're going to see a tie-in to curiosity. And finally, you're going to see a lot in with social responsibilities. And social responsibilities have to do with group responsibilities, intercultural awareness, and global issues. And I want to say that very clearly, that when it comes to social responsibilities, this is what I mean, that we learn more than just language with guess what? We learn with our group responsibilities, we learn how to interact in a group and how to be good collaborators. But social responsibilities also involves intercultural awareness. We learn what life is like for us in Vietnam. We learn what life is like for those in other countries, and we learn how they compare. We can talk about what's the same and what's different. And then global issues, again, some things that we should care about and need to install to our students so that they can become good global citizens. Things like recycling, things like taking care of the planet, being kind to animals, that sort of thing. So that's the background of what we're going to be looking at. That's the methodology of guess what that I want to show that we're going to be looking at in action. What I'd like to do now is show you step by step how guess what does that. Now, what you need to know about guess what is the book, of course, has a global aim. It's linked to the Common European Framework of Reference. We've aligned it and mapped it, so that it can be, we've even changed it a bit so that it fits very strongly with the Vietnamese curriculum and what, needs to be taught is specifically for your students at the right time. It has global aims of the book, and global means that there's some skills and objectives that it wants the whole book to accomplish. By the time that they end this book, they will be much further along in their language development. And that's why we get books, because books have global aims. But in order to accomplish these global aims, they have to be broken down into unit aims. And so you're going to find a number of units, and guess what? I believe there's 8 of them. You're going to find, and when you look at these units, each unit has specific aims. For example, I'm going to look at unit 7 now, and the overall aims of this unit, the ones that help lead to the global aims. Students learn to talk about the market and fruit and vegetables. Very important words to have in English, especially for primary learners. Not just I can identify fruit, but learn to talk about the market so that we have the vocabulary that we want them to talk about and the context of which they might use it. We also want them to identify fruit and vegetables in a place or a picture using there are and there aren't, because that's actually grammar, isn't it? It's, different than there is and there isn't, because it involves plural. And in a previous unit, they've learned there is and there isn't. But now we can look at it this way to say, how do we talk about things with a plural variety? And how can we talk about it with positives and negatives? It's something that may seem simple to us, but we have to remember how much of a difficulty sometimes students have with there is, there are, there isn't, there aren't. And so we have this specific grammar point. And then we at this unit want them to choose a smoothie. And that might sound like, why is that a learning point? Choosing a smoothie? Well, that's our options for personalization. This is where students get to recycle the vocabulary, to reuse the vocabulary, putting it on their own choices, and learning the language of making choices, of making decisions. There's language that supports this outcome. And it goes with the language of identifying things they want. I would like, I wouldn't like, I want, I don't want, do you want? These sorts of things. And then finally, an optional unit aim, talking about the parts of plants we can eat. The reason why that aim is in there is because it has what we call a CLIL focus. Now, CLIL, C-L-I-L, stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning. But all you need to know about it is it means that sometimes we use English for communication and sometimes we use English to study other subjects. So there's an optional part with guess what, that maybe we want to bring in the language of science. Maybe we want to bring in the language of math. Maybe we want to bring in the language of art or music into the classroom. It gives us a chance to do that. So one of the unit aims might be talking about the parts of plants we can eat, not because we need it in everyday conversation. I never say, hello, hello, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? I'm fine. Did you know that we only eat the root part of a turnip? Yeah, it's not conversation, but it's important in order for us to connect language to the courses that we study at an appropriate level for our young learners. So those would be the unit aims. And again, we have the global aims, the aims of the whole book to teach English. We have the unit aims. And the unit aims are important because the unit aims are met by having an aim for each lesson. And guess what has been designed to make sure that each lesson follows a predetermined, a set pattern that we know can help make those unit aims get accomplished so that those unit aims can support the global aims. Every unit or in guess what follows the same pattern. So if we look at the lessons in a unit, we can see how guess what works in order to make language learning happen. So let's look at a unit. And what I want to show you right now is we're actually looking at the first page of a unit. And when you're teaching with guess what, please don't skip the first page. There is so much here. may look just like a pretty picture, but there's a lot that happens with the first page. Even though that it's technically not lesson 1, I like to think of it as lesson 0. Now, we don't need to spend 45 minutes on a unit introduction, but I think it's very important for us with young learners to spend enough time on the unit introduction, because there's so much that they can achieve through this. There's visual literacy going on. Visual literacy means that they're looking at a picture and they're using their words to describe or to activate what they see in the picture. It's a chance and an opportunity for us to use language. It also activates schema. And that's a fancy way of saying it allows us as teachers to find out what the students already know, and a chance for students, their brains, to start thinking about what they'll be developing, what they'll be adding on their knowledge to. Schema activation is very important when we teach, especially young learners, so that students can understand the context that they're learning language in. It also provides, and this is key to motivation, so many of your questions are about how do I motivate young learners? Well, here's how. Don't skip the unit introduction. The unit introduction is motivating because we give students a safe environment for output. And it's output based on what they already know, not testing we've just taught them. I don't want to speak to somebody if I think they're testing me and trying to evaluate if what I'm saying is right or wrong. But I do want to speak to somebody if they're interested in what I have to say. And young learners are the same way. It's a chance for us to ask questions. And when we get their answers, we don't jump on their grammar and say right or wrong. We find out what they know and we listen to what they say and we react and we're happy. We have real language experiences with them, not fake language experiences where we try to tell them what they've done right and wrong and correct them with English. If a student says something and you understand it during the unit introduction, even if the grammar is not perfect, let it go, because the important thing is that the message gets communicated. Sometimes learners challenge, or teachers challenge me with that, but won't they make mistakes? Shouldn't I fix all their mistakes? Well, no, because chances are they're going to reflect more on how they felt that they got corrected after you asked their opinion, that they're going to ignore the correction anyway, and I've made a bad feeling in the classroom. There are times for us to correct when we do some of the grammar activities, when we do some of the more controlled practice, and that will come up later on when we look at guess what. But for the unit introduction, just be free with it. Make it a safe, make it a relaxed environment. Care about what the learners say. Why is this important? Because if it's safe and their schema is activated, this is where I can start doing some active learning. Active learning does not mean playing a game. Active learning does not mean moving around. Active learning means being active in the student's mind. It's the mind that's active. And so when we use this unit introduction to activate their knowledge, active, activate, same root word there, that's what we're going for. And finally, it gives us a chance for formative assessment. It gives us a chance for us, like I said, for us to find out what words of fruit do they already know? Will I have to spend a lot of time with vocabulary? Will I be able to spend just a short amount of time with vocabulary? How does that work? So, that's what we're really getting when we're talking about the unit introduction. Let me give you an example of how I might ask a unit introduction. Let me know in the chat box, what can you see in the photo? Go ahead and type in the chat box now, a little chance for interaction. I'd like to know from you guys, what can you see in the photo? Absolutely. I see fruit. What kinds of fruit can you be? I see women. I see watermelon. Absolutely. Give me some more. It's a floating. Oh, no. You can send it to everybody. You can send it directly to me. The message, I had a message sent directly to me. A floating market. Yeah. Pineapple, pineapple. A paint bucket. I have to say, you're the first person who's pointed out the paint bucket when I've done this. Yeah, very good. And they're using the paint bucket as a seat, aren't they? So is it a paint bucket, or is it a chair, or is it both? I don't know, but it's a paint bucket. I see a boat. Watermelon, pineapple, tomato, coconuts. Love that. Love that tweet. Thank you very much. Yeah, seeing, oh, even some tomatoes. The paint bucket to keep money. I see. So she's sitting on it to keep the money on. I've just learned something. That's fantastic. I didn't know that. You keep the money in the paint bucket. I just learned something new. That has made my day. Thank you. Thank you, Dom. Thank you. Boat water, yes. Now, I've already seen this a little bit in the thing, but I'm going to ask you again, what is special about this market? What makes this market different from most other markets in the world? What is special about this market? Yeah, exactly. And for those of you watching the video and the chat box, we're seeing that it's on the river. We're buying all things in the river. I'm getting a lot of direct messages, boats, yes. Happens on the river. Floating market, absolutely. You know, it's special. This isn't something that happens all around the world. How many people can you see in the photo? I'm not talking about the cartoon. I'm just talking about people, real people, 2 or 3. Yeah, maybe some people see the feet up at the top and they count that as a person. There are 2 or 3 people, absolutely. What are they selling? You all already got that. Yes, they're selling fruit. What color is the fruit? Can you see? What colors are they? What colors are the fruits? Green. Yeah, I see a lot of green and a lot of red. It's very colorful. Greens and reds. What color is the pineapple? Yeah, yellow. Very good. So greens and reds and yellow. And I would ask this question just to review the colors, you know, just to make sure. It's not that I'm teaching my students new language. I'm trying to activate the language that my students have. And then, like I said, it doesn't just have to be visual literacy. It can be, you know, some things that make us go deeper into the photo. What do you think it smells like? What do you think it smells like at this market? Ooh, sweet. I love that in the chat box. It smells sweet. Can somebody tell me how it smells? It smells sweet. It smells sour. Ooh, there's a very sweet smell. I had somebody in the last session say dirty because the river was dirty, but I think, you know, this market's probably sweet. Yeah. Any other words besides sweet? Any other things that you could think of how this market might smell? I like that word flavor. You know, flavor, we usually have to do with taste, but yeah, there's a lot of aromas, isn't there? There's a lot of flavors that we get through the smells, these aromas, lots of smells from food, because I'm guessing at this market, it's more than just fruit that they smell. So there's a lot that we're going to smell. What do you think it sounds like? What are some things you're going to hear from this photo? What does it sound like? Noisy. What do you think some people are saying? What are some things that they say? You can tell me in Vietnamese, you can tell me in English. I don't care. What are some things that you hear? Noisy, noisy how? Tell me more. What do you hear? Is it noisy because there's lots of music, or is it noisy for some other reason? What do you hear that makes it noisy? I got a direct message to me, says noisy because the boats. Okay, maybe somebody has a boat motor instead of there. Trading. Yes, somebody said trading. Yes. Thank you, Twee. Trading. Now, whisper. Somebody said maybe quiet, because I see in the chat box whispering. Do they? I've never been to this floating market. If you've been to a floating market, do people, when they buy things, do they talk quiet or do they talk loudly? I know sometimes maybe they want to talk quietly because they don't want to let other people to know that they're getting a special price. But, or maybe they're saying like, watermelons, watermelons, this much. I don't know. How do you think the people's voices are? Do you think that they're quiet, or do you think that they're loud when they talk at the market? So one person said they talk loud. Yeah, I see bargain again, that they're going to be, bargaining. I've got 2 for shouting, 1 for whispering. I need 2 more people. Do you think the people on the boats, are they speaking loud or are they speaking quietly? Loud or quiet? Not the whole market, but the people when they talk. Are they talking loud or quiet? Loud. So loud wins. We think that it's loud. Let me ask you, do you like fruit? Let me know in the chat box. Yes, I do, or no, I don't. Do you like fruit? Yes. Okay, so we have lots of people who like fruit. Fantastic. I want to know in the chat box, if you said yes, everybody said yes. What is your favorite fruit? The one you like the best? Tell me, what is your favorite fruit? Watermelon. Is it a lot? Go ahead. Tell me the number 1. You might like a lot of fruits, but I want to know. Tomatoes, pineapples. You can like all of them, but which one do you like the best? Orange, avocado. That's, my favorite fruit, but it can be very expensive. Some durian. Oh, durian. JH says durian. Oh, I don't know about that one. Apple, pineapple. How about most of you? JH in the chat box said durian. Is durian good or is durian bad? Let me know in the chat box. I want to see good or bad for durian. I'm just curious. Do you all care about it or not? Good. Oh, delicious. Oh, I don't know about that. It's so good. Is it? For me, I think that, and someone's trying to remote control my screen. Please don't do that. For me, I think that durian tastes good when it's used in things. Like I like durian ice cream and I like durian cheesecake, but I don't like to just eat a durian. I don't know, the texture, the thing. So it's not because of the smell, because durian ice cream smells, durian cheesecake smells. I don't know, when I'm eating a durian, it just, it's slimy. The way that it feels in my mouth, I don't like it. So there you go. Thank you, Windyman. Thank you so much. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I'm happy to get a me too. My last question, is this market in our country? And by our country, Vietnam. Do you think that it's in Vietnam? And thinks it might be the Philippines. Someone thinks it's in Kenta. Yes, when I travel to Canada. I will say that, yes, this photo is from Vietnam. And guess what? We've used a lot of photos from Vietnam to personalize it with the students. But how do you know? What is special about this photo that lets you know that it's in Vietnam? It's a floating market. Vietnam has floating markets. Anything else that's special that lets you know, hey, this is probably Vietnam, something very special. Now, I cannot tell from the photo that it's in Canada. There's pictures of many people, but if I saw this picture, yes, it has the noma, it has the hat. These hats, look at the hat that they're wearing. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. This is in the Mekong Delta, the conical hats, very much. Here's another picture of a floating market. Do you think that this is in Vietnam? No, does anybody want to guess where this photo was taken? This one was not in Canada. No, the last one was in Canada, but not this one. Yeah, it was in Thailand. Yeah, I saw it in there. And if you look at the hat, we can see some Thai language there. It says Talat Nam, which means floating market in Thai. And with my students, I might ask, what's the same? What's different? How do I know that it was in Thailand? And I'd ask those questions again. And here's another market that I could show another photo and ask students what they could see in those same questions, the colors. And what I wanted to show you, I spent a lot of time doing that with you. And this one is from Peru, by the way. This is a market in Peru, this photo. Just to show you how we can activate schema, how much language we can get from the students right away before we jump into the lesson. And then, guess what? Each lesson would have a specific aim. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this presentation is go through and show you how the lesson aims work. And with lesson 1 for this unit, you can see I have vocabulary aims. Students learn and talk about fruit and vegetables. And I can see the new language that we want to learn. And I can see the recycled language, because as we know, when teaching young learners, we don't just need to give them new things in every lesson. We need to give them a chance to encounter and repeat the language they've learned again and again. So I have new language and I have recycled language that they can build upon and see it again and again. Market, fruit, vegetable, green, yellow, brown, red, big, small. And I can also see the materials that I need for the lesson. And provided guidance in order to make this lesson happen in the class. And the lesson is not the book. The book is part of the lesson, but the book is not the whole lesson. There are things we do before we open the book. Things like illicit food words, pineapple. And then we can find a student and say, and guess about them and say, okay, here's Twee in our class. Do you think Twee likes pineapple? And the other students guess. And then we ask Twee, do you like pineapple? And maybe Twee says, no, I don't. And we see if we were right or wrong. And then we also have a bit of a presentation. You hold up a pen and say, this is a pen. And then we hold up 4 pens and say, these are pens. And we look at the structure because I want to review that we're talking about singular and plural. That we can do before we even open the book. And then when we open the book, you can see that it starts with lesson 1, which is that input. Because the input is going to become output. It's so important that we do tasks with young learners that are listen and. It's not just listen, it's listen and. So here they have to listen. And then we're going to have them listen and point. And after they can listen and point, then we have them listen and repeat. First, we make sure they understand. Which one's watermelon? And they point. Which one's grape? And they point. And then after that, we have them repeat. Input becomes output. And then you can see that the new language is put into context with sentences. These are lemons, they're small and yellow. We're introducing the language that they're going to be learning later, but it's introduced in the context of learning the new vocabulary words, kind of like substitution drills. And then after we've done lesson 1, because that page of the book's not going to take 40 minutes, it'll take about 20 minutes. What do we have after the book? Well, maybe we can play a game. And there are instructions in the teacher's book of how to play the game. And for each and every lesson, you get ideas of what to do before the book is open and after the book is closed, so that the game that we play or the activity that we do is a chance to use the language, but in a fun and playful way. There's a standard game, but what I also love about Guess What? Some of you might be saying, my class is very big. I have 20 or 30 students. Some of them understand, some of them don't. What can I do? Well, there are different activities that you can use for differentiation. Just because your class is big, we can still give every learner what they need. So maybe I divide them up into different groups. And for my learners that need some extra support, there's a reinforcement activity. They could play a game of Does It Match using the flashcards. And it's not a worksheet. It's not something like they get extra homework because to make them feel like they're not as good. It's extra support in the form of something fun. Or if I have a large class, I'm going to have learners who are kind of above the level. So then I can have an extension activity, something for those learners to do to provide extra challenge. And for every lesson in Guess What? There are ideas for extra challenge or extra support based on what you as the teacher think your students need. That's the most important thing. They still need the teacher to make the decision for the activities. We've given you the ideas, but it's your judgment. That's the way that the material and the teacher work together. So for any of you who say, what do I do if I have a large level class? Or how do I motivate them? How do I keep their confidence so that they don't feel discouraged? That's the answer to your question. Make sure that we're finding the right activity that fits their need, not punishing them by extra lessons and extra homework. All of that, I just wanted to show you, we've outlined very clearly in the teacher's book. You can see that the warmer, the presentation, how to use the student's book, the workbook links, and even ending the lesson, play a game of fruit salad, or those extra activities, they're given there for you in the teacher's book already, so that you as a teacher, if you choose to use it, have it already planned and designed for you. I hope you like that. I hope you're excited about that. Then, as Guess What continues, it moves on to lesson 2. Lesson 2 follows the same structure as lesson 1. It's more presentation and practice of vocabulary. Now, at the end, you can combine lesson 1 and 2 for more games and more extensions, putting lesson 1 and 2 together. But you can see I gradually provide extra vocabulary for the students. In this case, mangoes, pineapples, pears, tomatoes, and onions. And instead of saying these, now we're learning those, a different demonstrative pronoun. So it introduces new discrete items and repeats and scaffolds the functional language. That's very important. So lessons 1 and 2 work together to make that vocabulary. Systems come first. In this case, the system of vocabulary. Then, I should also point out that, there is a workbook link, and the workbook is a chance for extra practice. So this is an example of combining lesson 1 and 2 together and how it happens in the workbook after lesson 2. What are these? They are bananas. What are those? So that I can see the language and how it fits as I bring them together. It's what we in language call consolidation of the target language. And then lesson 3. Lesson 3, the aims are a little bit different. You can see I have lots of, some, any, and market stall as the new language. And what lesson 3 does is it shifts us from the system of vocabulary to the system of grammar. And it introduces new discrete items and repeats and scaffolds functional language. It has the same structure, but it gives us more practice of the vocabulary, but now it's to introduce the structures and be flexible with the structures of English. So it looks very similar, but instead of the focus being on new vocabulary, the focus is on the language structures. And that's why there's a song, because songs are wonderful to practice and have fun with the new language structures that we've learned. Songs bring grammar and vocabulary together. But you can see down at the bottom, it says, remember, what are these? These are mangoes. The highlight, the emphasis is on the grammar and the grammar structure we want to use. And then for lesson 4, also a little bit freer, but a chance for them to practice the grammar. Are these? No, they aren't. Yes, they are. So that it's not just these are, but now I'm getting the question form and the positive and the negative form of the words. So again, listen and repeat for the model practice. Then that goes into the output. Look at the picture, ask the question, you know, and we're saying like in the picture, are there mangoes? No, there isn't. No, there aren't. Yes, there are. Are these coconuts? No, they aren't. Are these tomatoes? Yes, they are. And then it ends for reinforcement with a chant. And chants are different than songs because songs bring the vocabulary and grammar together in a fun way. Chants help us with the rhythm and the production of English to make sure that we're sounding natural. So chants and songs both use rhythm, but there's a difference in their purpose. We've done the systems, then it switches with skills. And I put lesson 5 and 6 together on the page. These are 2 different lessons because I wanted to show you again how even though we've switched from skills, reading, writing, listening, speaking, from systems, it still goes input to output. Lesson 5, what are your favorite smoothies? Again, an opener, just to make sure they know what smoothies are, a chance for fun. But then we listen and say numbers, and we listen, and this is about developing the listening sub-skills. And then in the next lesson, lesson 6, on the right-hand side of the page, we have activity 18, 19, and 20, which in this case isn't about speaking. It helps to start developing our writing skills. So we can see here, you know, yes, we review, ask and answer with a friend. Then we read a paragraph and we write the words, and that paragraph becomes a model answer so that we can make a list of fruits to write about and write about the fruit smoothie. And again, in the workbook, we could send it home for homework so that they write an even more detailed paragraph at the end. So that writing here is to start showing them how sentences become paragraphs. So there are skills involved. In this case, the skills of writing. Sometimes it'll be the skills of speaking, but the skills for lessons 5 and 6 involve input in lesson 5 and output in lesson 6. And then guess what? In lesson 7, we'll always have a story. And the story uses the same characters throughout the book. And all the stories have the same narrative, the same structure. They always have to find something. They're on a treasure hunt. And this is important because it's like a continuing story, because in order to develop these literacy skills, the students need to encounter the same routine. And the students are always in search of something. And there's a chance here for us to do the reading and to understand the story and even act it out and role play with friends for a bit of fun, retelling the stories in the own words by the pictures, which is important. But the story is used in lesson 7, but it's also used in lesson 8 a little bit because the stories are going to be tied to a social value. And you can see here in lesson 7, down at the bottom, there's a value called reusing old things. We can start with this and either in lesson 7 or make it its own lesson if you care so much about the value, that we're not just learning the story. We have a chance to talk about why is it important to reuse old things? Why is it important to take care of things and make sure they're in good condition and not buy something new all the time? Then the next lesson, which I should say is lesson 8, it's what I like to call talk time, but this is the functional language. This is where we can bring it all together and we can learn more functional language for the real world. And here it's about choices. So we're learning the structure, what do you want, but we're also getting used to or. Or can be very tricky for students. You know, what do you want? Do you want the red one or the blue one? Yes. Yes is not an answer to or, you know, so we get to listen to or, and we get to learn the language of choices. So it's about making choices and understanding that very important concept in English. Then the book will continue by giving us lesson 9, and lesson 9 will always be called animal sounds. And this one's important to me because animal sounds is really about phonics. And you can see this one is teaching the sounds of ch, and ow. And phonics and sound relationships are so important, not just for pronunciation, they're important for the development of literacy. To understand that can be made with the letter U or the letter O, like in monkey or coconuts. Same sound, 2 different letters. Or the OU is not O, it's ow. Or the ch, you know, how do I make that? Ch, CH makes the ch sound, not the sound. So these aren't just lessons for speaking, they're fully based in the systems of English. The systems of English being decoding, spelling, all of these things that are tied to phonics. So important. If I was looking and showing you how the lesson worked, we would see a fun warm-up, and then we would present the new words, chipmunk, cheeks, mouse, etc. And then we would repeat the words, emphasizing the sounds, ch, chipmunk. And then look what we have them do in number 28. We have them categorize the sounds, listen and draw them. Which ones fit in the circle? Which ones fit in the square? And then we move on to longer chunks, integrating the sounds. We can start slow, chipmunks with big cheeks, and get faster and faster, chipmunks with big cheeks, mouse in the house, mouse in the house. And then with the book closed, it actually asks us to finish with a fun role play, pretending to be at the market. And again, this is a chance for us to put the whole lesson together, our functional language, our vocabulary, our grammar that we learned. If I were doing this in class, I would actually pretend to be at a floating market, and I would have students pretend to be in their boats, rowing to other people and say, I'm selling watermelons. Would you like watermelon? No. Okay, well, would you like durian or pineapple? Durian, you know, and have them practice going around the classes, you know, rowing their boats for fun, like they were in a floating market. It's a small thing, but this role play where they can pretend to be at the floating market with the movement, using the language in English. It's a chance to have fun with the language. All the language we learn, the grammar, the vocabulary, the functional language, and the sounds. In lesson 10, there's an evaluation, and this is like a low stakes assessment. It's a chance for us to kind of test them, to help prepare them for exams. You know, if they're taking Cambridge exams, this is a good chance for them to see exam style questions, and also a chance for us to review the unit so that we as teachers can see if there's anything that we need to reteach. But that's not how the unit ends. Ending on a test can sometimes be a downer. So there's one more thing in the unit, which we call the share corner. And this is a chance for us to show off, to show and tell, to work in a group, to practice those social responsibilities. Each unit ends with another chance to bring it all together. It's not a role play. It's even more personal than that. It's more motivating. And it gives confidence because it gives students a chance to show off what they've done. If you want your students to be confident, give them a chance to show off and say, look what I can do. It's educational play where students get a chance to express themselves in English. It's a very positive way to end each unit. We don't end with a test. We end with, look what I can do. Here it's this idea of you pretend you're having a birthday party, make a list of fruits and food for your party. You're going to do this with a group of friends. Maybe you draw the picture and then you stand up in front of the class and you tell what you've chosen for your birthday party. That sort of thing. It's a chance to share. No new language is taught. That's important. It's a chance for them to feel, I can do this. I can do something in English I could not do a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. That's motivation. Motivation comes from, look what I can do. There's also an optional activity, if you remember, what part of plants do we eat? This is in the back of the book. I just want to show it to you. Your chance to use it or not, depending on if you have time, but this is CLIL. And again, it's related to those science lessons. So here, it's what part of plants can we eat? You know, we can listen and repeat. We watch a video about the plants and where they come from, and we learn words like roots, stems, leaves, fruits, and seeds. And there's an extra project if you want to do it. If you think your students would be interested in it, or if it fits with something they're learning in science class, great. If you don't have time, it's okay. But if you do, it's just another chance to link language learning to what they've studied and to satisfy some curiosity. You know, isn't it interesting that we eat so many parts of a plant? So, to review, what I wanted to share with you today, I wanted to show you basically how a unit of Guess What is structured and the important way that learning happens through a unit. And it starts out always with that unit introduction. I spent so much time showing you the unit introduction because it's more than just what's in the picture. Do you like it? Okay, next. That unit introduction is that confidence. It's the chance for students to have fun with the unit, to be preparing themselves for what they're going to learn, to what we call in language teaching, priming them, which means getting ready for what they're going to study. And a chance to, you know, have that intercultural awareness sometimes as well. So that unit introduction, a key part with those wonderful visuals. The next thing, 2 lessons that are the presentation and practice of vocabulary. Input, input, input. System, system, systems. And then presentation and practice of grammar. Input, input, input. System, system, systems. And then it turns into receptive skills. It'll be something on listening or reading. Input becomes output. And then productive skills, getting them a chance to do their speaking and writing. All that input becomes output for the students here. And then a chance to really see the language in action. A chance for us to engage with the story, that ongoing story with the same characters they become familiar with. And by the way, those same characters are the ones that are in the presentation of grammar and vocabulary in the units. So there's familiarity, there's routine. They get to know the personalities of characters. That's important. Then we go into sounds and phonics, those animal sounds, learning them in a fun way. Then the evaluation. But it doesn't just end on the test. The evaluation is important to us before we end the unit so we can see, do we need to reteach? Do we need to evaluate some more? Do I need to, or did they get it fine and they're ready for the exam? My chance to supplement if I need to as a teacher. But again, we don't end on the exam or the evaluation. We end with that share corner, a chance to show off, a chance to say, for the students, say, teacher, look at me, a chance to send something home to the parents that they can be proud of. Again, and that share corner, it leaves us with that motivation, that feeling of I can do it. And then we start it all over again with the next unit. Again, not learning language right away, getting that motivation from the share corner and letting it carry on over to the unit introduction and the next picture. That's the way that it works. And it's important, again, because the unit helps those global aims. And the unit aims are supported by each lesson aim. So the 12 lessons in each, or the 11 lessons in each unit go on, and they help us reach those unit aims, which get us the global aims, which is to build systematically correct English with our students. It's not just a correct collection of unit. Each unit builds on itself so that by the time they finish with the book, it's a complete syllabus that has really strongly supported and challenged learners into developing the language they need at this level. So that was my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed looking at Guess What. I certainly enjoy talking about it. You can probably tell that. And we have some time for questions now. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat box. Or if there's something else you'd like to know about Guess What, about teaching, or otherwise, I will just turn it over to Win now. So thank you very much for your time. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you very much, teacher, for your listening and participation. And now this is the Q&A session. Please have to put your questions, your comment to the chat box, and we will help you out. In the meantime, I have some questions that the teacher, when they register for this session, they have put on the form. So maybe Alan, can you have some of the questions first, and then we can go back to the question from the chat box. I listened to your presentation and I found that you have mentioned some of these. So would you mind to repeat so that the teacher can get more concentrated?
Sure. No problem.
Okay. So the first question is how to get a lesson inspired to the student.
I mean, I think that, you know, it comes with what we talked about at those unit introductions and those unit openers. I know we already talked about that, but yeah, if you're asking about inspiration, then it's probably, if your students are uninspired, it's probably that they feel like you're making them do too much new with the language instead of letting them show off the language they already have. I get inspired when I get to express myself, not when I constantly have to learn more, learn more, learn more. Sometimes teachers teach too much. Teaching is just one role of the teaching process. Yes, we need to introduce new language, but we have to give them a chance to use it. And we have to give them a chance to understand who our learners are and express themselves and listen to what they're saying more than are they saying it correctly. So how do you get the inspiration? You know, I think that those pictures that we used with Guess What, that's what they do with it, because students can put themselves in that picture. You know, think about how you felt like, you know, the difference between saying, what can you see in the picture versus what do you think it smells like? What do you think it sounds like? These are ways to get, oh, I think it might be this. Touch the imagination. And there's not one correct answer. Now students might want to say, oh, I think it's this. I think it's that. And you remember what I did in the chat box? I said, I had one person say whisper, one person say noisy. What do you think? Which one is it? Noisy, quiet, you know, and get students to express themselves that way. It's not about, you know, if students are uninspired, sometimes we do too much of teaching the language for 20 minutes, and then the rest of the 20 minutes of our lesson is prove to me you've learned the language. Well, I wouldn't feel inspired in that situation. Yes, we do sometimes give direct instruction. It's part of our job, but it's not 100% of our job. We give the times to be free and relaxed and safe with the language use. So that's what I'd say about inspiration. Make sure we're using language for the meaningfulness, not just the form and the grammar.
Thank you. I hope the teacher gets some tips from this. And also the teacher asked how to teach sing and judge.
Sure. Well, I think, you know, songs and chants, songs, you know, like I said, they have a different purpose. What I would say is songs when we're doing things with songs, it's more about having fun. It's more about putting the language together. And the way that we teach it, you probably teach it line by line, and you make sure that they learn the line of the song and the melody. And then once they learn the song, maybe we add some movements to it and we have some fun. And we can repeat the songs again and again and again. Songs also can be reviewed. It is okay to completely, if you start doing Unit 7 and the students really liked a song in Unit 2, go back and do the song for Unit 2 for fun. You know, it's like I said, the purpose of songs is to put the vocabulary and grammar together. It joins the two. That's what songs do. Chants have a different purpose. Chants, I still teach them somewhat the same way. I need to teach it and there'll be a rhythm to it, but chants will always be shorter. Chants will probably be, you know, the same sentence again and again, like, I like bananas. I like bananas. Yum, yum, yum. I like bananas. And the thing is with chants is it's not that we're learning new vocabulary, we're putting new vocabulary together. The thing that we're getting with chants is pronunciation. The thing that you get with chants is pronunciation. I'm going to say that one. It says, is this boring if you repeat again and again? I'm going to go ahead and answer that because we have, that's a great thing. We are the ones who get boring or who get bored in our classroom. Teachers tend to get bored faster than students. And this, I think, is a problem with primary teachers. Boring to whom? Just because you're bored doesn't mean your students are bored. My students would sing the same song again. If you're a parent, you know this. You're driving in a car. When you have children, I'm sure, you know, you were driving in a car and your students or your children probably sometimes said, Mom, I want to hear this song. And you're like, we've listened to it 100 times. It's driving me crazy. It's not driving the students crazy. It's driving us crazy. And that's why we get paid, because we have to sit through boring things that are good for the students. So is it boring? Ask the students if they're bored, if they want to do it again. 90% of the time, my students, do you want to sing it again? Yes! I'm thinking, oh God, no. But they wanted to. So is this boring? And I see that in the chat box. That was the question. Boring for who? For the teacher, probably. For the students, no, probably not. And guess what? We get paid for it. We have to suck it up with it being bored. So that's it. Is it boring for students? Probably not. Young learners like repeating because, again, and I'm speaking in general, but young learners like to show off. You know, they're not teenagers yet where they don't want to be the center of attention. Young learners at this age, if we give them a chance, you know, this is where they want to show off. And showing off, they need the confidence of knowing how to do something. So repetition is good. And it's usually, that's where confidence, that's where motivation comes from. You know, you have students who like to show off if they're constantly come up to you, teacher, at the weekend, I did this, or look what I can do, or do you like that? You know, these are the students that we have. Let me get back to my other thing to say about chants, just to finish it. That's why chants always have a rhythm. Like if I say, I'm going to go to the store, it's not just about the words. That rhythm is important. I'm going to go to the store. You know, I'm going to go to the store. So that we can hear the word stress. Or, you know, that's different than like, you know, say, if I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the mall. You know, I can change the word, but the stress on done, done, done. I'm going to go. So that they don't just, so that our students stop saying, I'm going to go to the store, that they say, I'm going to go, you know, to go. That we learn how it's not to go in English, but it's to go. So that's how songs and chants are different. The way we teach them may seem similar because there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of teaching, there's a lot of doing it again, but the aim, the purpose of why we do them are two different aims. And you're on mute, Win.
Sorry.
That's
We
okay.
also have questions, how to teach new vocabulary to students.
I think that, you know, new vocabulary to students is taught very much directed. You know, this is why we have flashcards. This is why we have to rely on their memory. This is why that we have to, you know, keep on reviewing it as well. Now, through the book, through those things of input and listen and point, making sure that they understand it by reception first, and then that they can say the word, that's step one. But the second thing to remember is, don't get so upset when your students forget the vocabulary words. This is normal for students this age. That's why you saw in guess what, that there's at all the lessons, there's the new vocabulary learned and there's the recycled vocabulary learned. We cannot expect young learners to hear a word once and remember it. They have to keep on encountering it again and again and again and again and again. And again, is it boring if we repeat again? Sometimes you teach words and you've taught it before, and to the students, it's like the first time they've learned it. I've frequently heard, especially when I go to Vietnam, I hear a lot of teachers tell me, I'm worried about my kids because their mind is like a sponge. Their brain is like a sponge. They absorb everything. And I agree. Their brain is like a sponge. They get it right away. But just like a sponge, sponges dry out. Sponges get dry again. We have to keep the sponge wet. So we have to keep on doing it again and again and again. A sponge doesn't stay wet forever, and vocabulary doesn't stay in the minds of our students forever. And that's why it's important that we had, if you looked at those lessons, and guess what? We had 2 lessons of vocabulary, then 2 lessons of grammar, and then so much about them using it again and again and again in different ways, so that they're encountering the words again and again and again. If we just expect them to learn the word, learn how it's spelled, and then take a test in 2 weeks, of course they're not going to remember the words. So that's what I'd say about vocabulary.
Thank you. In Vietnam, I can see that not all of the teachers, some the teachers ask the student to write the new vocabulary on the notebook many times. Is it a good way?
Good, but it can be bad. It's good if it's part of the process. Before anything gets written, you have to know that they're able to speak it. Before anything gets spoken, you have to be able to know that they can identify it. And what I worry about in Vietnam is students are writing P-I-N-E-A-P-P-L-E, but they in their head may not be thinking about what a pineapple is. So they can spell pineapple if you ask them, but then if you ask them to identify the fruit, I forgot. There's a process to it. You can write it, but writing comes after you're sure that they can identify it. This is why we have flashcards or pictures in the book, and we say, what is this? If they can't tell you what it is, they're not ready to write it. Listening, being able to identify it. Which one's a pineapple? After they get that right every time, then we switch to what is this, where they can say it. And then after they say it, we can get to writing. It needs to go through that process.
Okay, in the chat box, I see the very good questions from the teachers. How to guide a student think in foreign language, because all of them always translate into mother tongue.
What's wrong with the mother tongue? Why is that a bad thing? I speak Thai. Sometimes I translate from what I say what I want to say in English first before I say it in Thai. Thinking in English will come after you have confidence in the language. We cannot make people think in English. Now, there's a difference between being lazy and using the mother tongue to get to English. But as far as using the mother tongue as a bridge to get to English, if I say, you know, what's your favorite fruit? And they say it in Vietnamese, and I say, what's that in English? And they go from Vietnamese to English. The quickness and the going directly faster to English will come with practice. Sometimes we expect too much, too little. I have no problem with translation in a classroom, as long as the translation isn't just to be lazy. I want to use the first language to get to the second language. But as far as, how to guide them to think in a foreign language, it comes later. It comes after this level in the thing. It's not a goal of mine to get them to think in English. I need to get them to speak in English first. And if they go through the mother tongue to get it, fine. I have no problem with it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want an English only classroom. I want an English as much as possible classroom. I want a mostly English classroom, not English only. And there's enough studies that tell us that English only, when we become the English police, that's also when our students don't want to talk in class, because the students think, well, it's better for me to say nothing because the teacher will yell at me if I say something wrong. No, one of the greatest techniques I had is say it first in Vietnamese. Well, I taught in Thailand. Say it first in Vietnamese. Now, how do you say it in English? What's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that.
And during the session, I know that you mentioned a lot of role plays and pair work. What do you do when students are scared of doing this kind of activity?
I think that, that's a hard question to answer, because you're saying students are scared. There's 100 different reasons why students might be scared doing that activity. They might be scared with the partner you've paired them with. They might be scared because they don't have the language. They might be scared because of this. So I'm going to take the easy way out with the question. Your first step is to figure out what they're scared of. You can't answer that question because, oh, they're scared. Scared of what? And a lot of times teachers just look at the fear without trying to analyze, what does this mean? Where is the fear coming from? Because if you have 5 kids in your class that are scared of doing the pair work, you might have 5 different reasons they're scared. I can't answer that until I look at the class or that. And this is also why I can't go in and just teach a class right away. I need to develop the relationship with the students in order to get an idea of, hey, this is a shy student. Even when they speak Vietnamese, I would expect them to be shy in English. But if I have somebody who's very talkative in Vietnamese, but shy in English, that's a different type of thing. This is where I need a teacher to monitor and make decisions. So how do I? First, I look at why I think they're scared. And beyond that, until you answer that, I can't give you any tips or techniques, because there's not a one size fits all answer.
I also think that because the teacher don't have enough time to prepare for the student to get all the knowledge for role plays or for pair work, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, there's the fear, but, just because they're not talking doesn't mean fear. I answered that one question that way. And why are we assuming fear? Why do we think that it's fear? Number one thing that students say when we ask them why, like when I observe lessons and when I say, oh, your teacher wanted you to speak in class, why didn't you speak? Students tend to say, I wanted to speak in class, but the teacher did not give me enough time to think about what I wanted to say. Is it fear, or are we asking them to do too much too quickly?
Agree, yeah. I'm running out of the questions. The teachers here, do you have any other questions, please?
Yeah, we have one new question in the chat box.
Which one? Can you share?
Okay.
Can you share? Yeah. Can you share some tips that teacher can use to teach reading and writing skill more interesting and effectively?
I don't know. I mean, interesting is subjective, but effectively what we know about reading. Reading, make sure that we focus on meaning first before the language. Make sure students understand the story. When we're looking at a full story, make sure we're pausing in the story and saying, what do you think happens next? Make sure that we're relating the story and we're asking questions like, has this ever happened to you? What do you think will happen? That we're not just looking at the language and trying to understand the story, but we're putting ourselves in the story. So focused questions, not just comprehension questions, not just what color was it? How many people were there? Those are comprehension questions. But How did that make you feel? Do you have any other experiences? Why is this important? Do you think they made the right decision? And asking more open-ended questions that use the story as stimulus, not just as testing, did you get the language from it? Number one thing we can do. When it comes for writing, it's having strong models, making sure, you know, a lot of times teachers, they get scared of some of the activities that are in our course books because they feel like it's just copying. Copying is part of the process. Filling in those blanks, like what we saw in the writing activity, with the words that they choose, and then copying sentences, and then taking the sentences away and asking them to write again. Writing is a process, not just something to, hey, skip and do. Now, if you want to make it more interesting, give some choices. You know, hey, you can either write about a fruit you like or a fruit you don't like. Only you get to choose one. And they get the choice, but it still hits the same sort of language, so that we offer them the choice. But I wouldn't ask them to write about that until I've given them a model, and until they've written that model, probably copying. And I wouldn't have given them that model until I'm sure that they understand each sentence. We have to break it down step by step. And again, sorry to say, in Vietnam, when I have looked at teachers, we expect too much too quickly. Okay, class, open your book, take out your paper and start writing. Ah! Again, we're putting ourselves, we're having them do, you know, teenage level tasks. You know, they're still kids. Yes, they may be developing their language, but they're still kids. You know, don't worry, they're going to get there eventually. It's about finding the right task that's appropriate for their age. I'm not saying that we never have them write long things, but we only have them write long things after they've had practice copying and getting and scaffolding, what we call it in the language teaching business, building to it. That's how we can do it effectively. Interestingly, I mean, even still, you know, that's subjective. What's interesting to one person may not be interesting to another. That's where you as the teacher have to know what's interesting. I can't help you with that. What's interesting to me may not be interesting to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions, please, teacher? We have 1-2 more minutes.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes exactly, yeah. Are they all asleep?
Are you with us?
If you're still there, can you type the number 1 in the classroom? In the chat box? Can you just type the number 1? I want to make sure you're still there. Can I just see some number 1?
Thank you.
Number 1? Thank you. I was worried I lost you. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, so many of you. So many of you. Thank you for staying so long.
Thank you. We are here to help you out. So please put some questions, some comments so that we can help you out.
Or if you don't have a question, just because you can see we do want to help, if you could maybe write in the chat box one thing you enjoyed or one thing you learned in this session. I would really like to see that, because we'll use this when we develop further sessions, or I know what I'm doing. Oh, I'm so wonderful. You're wonderful. You're wonderful. No, I just want to know what helped you, so that when I develop the sessions, you know, a lot of times we only hear if people complain. I'd like to know what helped you and what you got out of this, so that I can make sure that I'm focusing this in the same way. Mixed ability and big classes. I'll go ahead and say this. Mixed ability and big classes are difficult, and there's nothing we can do that will make it easier. The trick is, what can we do to make it more manageable? And that's where I'd say, look at every single activity in the teacher's book, the teacher's resource books that you have, and think about what level of student does this fit. It might be towards the end of my lesson that I set up 3 different games, or the next class period, I have 3 different games, that I have a game for my lower level learners, a game for my middle level learners, and a game for my higher level learners. And you might be thinking, won't that make my lower level learners feel bad because they'll know they're lower level? No, it'll make them feel bad if you make them play the high level game and they're not ready. So it's not perfect, but it's better than putting everybody in the same game, to where half of them are bored because it's too easy and half of them are bored because it's too hard. You cannot teach to the middle of the class you kind of have to divide your class into threes and find something for everyone and decide, who's this activity for? So that's what I would say. For larger, you're going to have to break it up into smaller groups and then give each group what you have. And it's called differentiation. And there's lots of activities. I'm going to type that in the chat box. You can Google ways for differentiation, and that's it. So that's my answer. Again, that could be a whole 2-hour session right there, Win. So I'm just going to type differentiation. And if you want to know more, put that into Google and do differentiation activities. And that should give you some ideas.
Yeah, we have how to help students like learning foreign language is a kind of motivation.
Like, I don't know, sometimes you won't, and that's not my goal. You will never make me like math. I will never enjoy math. I don't understand why English teachers care a lot about this, because a math teacher never really asks, how can I make students love math? What I want them, I don't care if they love it or not. Sounds controversial, right, Win? What I care about is that they're engaged with it. And the way that they do that, the number one thing is that I never liked math because my math teachers did not explain how I was going to use it in real life. 3 + 4 = 7. I could do it, but why do I care? It was never made real to me. What happens is when we set up things like that activity with the role play of being at the floating market where they're using English to talk about, you know, oh, do you want this? Can I have a discount? If I were teaching that, I would even teach, can I have a discount to the young learners? Because let's be honest, in Southeast Asia, you have to ask for a discount at every market. I don't know if it's the same Win in Vietnam, but the first thing, you know, I go to, no matter what price they're going to tell me in Thailand, I'm going to say, can I have a discount right away? Is it the same in Vietnam, Win?
Yes, some places.
Yeah,
market,
some places.
Yeah.
So, I mean, then when I get that and we have fun with it, I'm not only doing the role play, pretending and imagining I'm in a boat, I'm seeing how the language can be used in real life. And for some, that is going to make them love English. You know, all of us are teachers because of English, probably because we love English. But to some, they still won't love English, but they'll at least see the importance of it. I don't love it, but I know it's important. And that's okay. And then some students will always feel about English the way that I feel about math. I can do it, give me my grade. I never want to do it again. And that's just normal in being a human being. What we have to be careful of is making sure that we don't expect our students to love English the same way a teacher does. Or we, you know, science teachers don't expect, you have to have a passion. I should say this. It's great that you do. Please don't stop your love of it, but don't expect everyone to love the same way you do. You know, English is like your kid. I've met Win's family. I've met her wonderful children. They are wonderful, but I don't love her children the same way that she does. Nor are all of our students going to love English the same way you do. We have to be realistic with what we mean by like or love. And to do that, it means making sure that they see we're not just learning it for the grade. We're learning it because it applies in real life. And then the last thing I would say, I know I've overtalked this answer, that's exactly what that share corner is designed to do. That share corner, and guess what? That's not for us hopping on their grammar, you know, or that's a chance for them to show up and like I said, to express themselves, to say English belongs with me. It's not about teaching new language. It's not about testing. It's done after the test, but it's done to make that engagement, hopefully that enjoyment of learning happen. And it's the best chance we can get, but we'll never make all of them love it. That's just not going to happen. I know it's not a great answer, but it's the real answer. So I hope that helped. Yes. And I hope it helps lessen the pressure. Our job is to teach them English, make sure not make sure that they love it. It's great if they do love it, but that's extra if they do.
Agree. Yes, we cannot make everyone love what we are doing. Yeah. We are trying our best and find a way to get as many as possible.
Exactly. And that's just teaching. Yeah, that's
okay. We don't have much time for more discussion. So I would like to thank you, Alan, for your wonderful session. And thank you, teacher, for your own so excellent listening and participation activity. And I do hope you find the guestwork book suitable to your common school program. And you also get some tips how to teach guesswork effectively to inspiring students in learning English. And I don't want to take more time from you. I do hope to see you in our future training and have a good Sunday. Thank you.
bye everyone.